The bus dropped me off at the end of a gravel road that seemed to stretch into nowhere. Behind me, the engine growled as it pulled away, leaving me standing alone in the cold morning air with nothing but a duffel bag and the address I'd memorized 3 times over: Blackwood Correctional Facility. The name itself sounded like something out of a gothic novel, but the job posting had been legitimate government issued, decent pay, full benefits. In this economy, you don't turn down steady work. The facility materialized from the fog like a monument to human misery. Gray concrete walls rose at least 30 feet high, topped with coils of razor wire that gleamed wetly in the dim light. The architecture was brutal, utilitarian, designed to break spirits rather than rehabilitate them. As I approached the main gate, I noticed how the building seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The windows were narrow slits, like the eyes of something ancient and malevolent, watching. My breath misted in front of me. It was October, but the cold here felt different. Wrong. It settled into your bones and made your teeth ache. The gate buzzed open before I could press the intercom. Someone had been watching. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting the entryway in harsh, stuttering illumination. The smell hit me immediately, industrial cleaner trying desperately to mask something underneath. Something organic and metallic, like old pennies left in a damp basement. My footsteps echoed against the tile floor, each sound bouncing back at me from multiple directions. "You're late." I spun around. A woman stood in the doorway I'd just entered through, though I hadn't heard her approach. She was perhaps 50, with steel gray hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Her face was all sharp angles and harder expressions. "I'm actually 10 minutes early," I said, checking my watch. The posting said to arrive by 8. "Here, you arrived by 7:30. Didn't they tell you?" They hadn't, but I nodded anyway. "Sorry. First day." I know who you are." She looked me up and down, her lip curling slightly. "Come on. Warden's waiting." I followed her through corridors that all looked identical. Gray walls, gray floors, gray ceilings. Occasionally, a door would appear, marked only with numbers that seemed to follow no logical sequence. 47, 12, 89, 3. She walked fast, her keys jangling against her hip with each step, and I had to nearly jog to keep up. "Few things you should know," she said without looking back. "This isn't like other facilities. We house special cases here, high risk, dangerous, not the kind that'll try to shank you in the yard. We don't have a yard. These are the ones other prisons couldn't handle." "Couldn't handle how?" She stopped so abruptly I nearly collided with her. When she turned, her eyes were hard. "You ask fewer questions. You'll sleep better at night. Trust me." The warden's office was exactly what I'd expected. Wood paneling, filing cabinets, a desk covered in paperwork, and cold coffee mugs. Warden Hayes was a broad-shouldered man in his 60s, with hands like slabs of beef, and a voice that sounded like grinding gravel. "Sit." I sat. He studied me for a long moment, then slid a manila folder across the desk. "You're clean. No criminal record. 2 years of security work at that shopping center downtown. Mediocre references, but nothing alarming." He leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. "You're also desperate. Otherwise you wouldn't be here." I didn't argue. He was right. "This facility operates on one principle," Hayes continued. "Rules. You follow them. You might last. You don't." He made a vague gesture. "Well, we've had turnover." "I understand." "No, you don't." He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "But you will. Jenkins here will show you the ropes. Keep your head down. Do your job. And for God's sake, listen when people tell you things." The woman, Jenkins, nodded curtly. "Come on. Shift starts in 20. The break room was a claustrophobic space with a vending machine that hummed too loudly and a coffee maker that looked older than I was. 3 other guards were there, all men, all wearing the same expression of exhausted resignation. None of them looked up when we entered. "This is the new guy," Jenkins announced. One of them, a heavy-set man with a thick mustache, grunted. "How long you think he'll last?" "Week, maybe," another said. He was younger, maybe mid-30s, with nervous eyes that darted around the room. "You tell him yet?" "Tell me what?" I asked. Silence. The kind that feels like a physical weight. Jenkins poured herself coffee, black, and took a long sip before answering. "Cell Block D, East Wing. There's an inmate there." She paused. "You'll know him when you see him." "What about him?" "Don't touch him," the mustached guard said. His voice was flat, dead serious. "Whatever you do, don't touch him." I laughed. It came out nervous, uncertain. "Is this like a hazing thing? Scare the new guy?" Nobody smiled. "I'm serious," the guard continued. He set down his newspaper and looked at me directly for the first time. "We all are. That's the rule. The only rule that really matters here. Don't touch him." "Who is he? What did he do?" "Doesn't matter what he did," Jenkins said. "Matters what he is." The younger guard shifted uncomfortably. "He's got. His hands are." He trailed off, unable or unwilling to continue. "Blue," the mustached guard finished. "Inmate with blue hands. You see him, you keep your distance. You don't make eye contact if you can help it, and you never, ever make physical contact, not for any reason." I wanted to ask more, but something in their faces stopped me. These weren't people prone to superstition or pranks. They looked genuinely afraid. "What happens if you touch him?" Jenkins drained her coffee cup. "We had a guard last year, Thompson. Good guy, 15 years on the job. Didn't believe the stories." She set the cup down with a sharp click. "He touched him. And nothing. Thompson's gone. They never found him. Checked every inch of this facility, every cell, every corridor, every air duct. Nothing. Like he just stopped existing." She checked her watch. "Your shift starts now. Block C, 3rd floor. Simmons will show you the rounds." I spent my first shift walking endless corridors with Simmons, the younger guard, with nervous eyes. He pointed out the basics. Where to check, when to check it, how to report incidents. It was mind-numbing work, but I was grateful for the distraction from that conversation in the break room, except I couldn't stop thinking about it. Block C was relatively quiet. The inmates were mostly in their cells, and the few who were out barely glanced at us as we passed. But I noticed something strange. Every once in a while, I'd catch sight of blue smudges on the walls. Handprints, maybe, or just stains. They were faint, almost invisible unless you were looking for them, but once I'd seen the first one, I couldn't stop seeing them. "What's that?" I asked, pointing to one. Simmons didn't even look. "Don't worry about it. It looks like paint." "It's not paint." By the time my shift ended, I'd counted 17 blue marks. They appeared at random intervals, sometimes high up near the ceiling, sometimes down near the floor. One was on a door that, according to Simmons, hadn't been opened in 5 years. I changed in the locker room, my muscles aching from the constant walking. The fluorescent lights above flickered intermittently, and I could hear water dripping somewhere nearby. As I was leaving, I noticed one more blue smudge, this one on my locker door. I hadn't seen it earlier. I reached out to touch it. "I wouldn't." I jerked my hand back. Jenkins stood in the doorway, still in her uniform. "Goes for the marks too. Same rule." "What is it?" "Something you don't want on your skin." She walked past me, opened her own locker. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's worse." I lay awake that night in my small apartment 3 miles from the facility, staring at the ceiling and listening to the silence. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those blue smudges, and somewhere in the building I'd just left, there was an inmate with blue hands that I'd been warned never to touch. The question that kept me awake wasn't what he'd done to get locked up. It was what happened if you broke the rule. The second day was when things started to feel wrong. Not obviously wrong, not at first. Just little things. Sounds that didn't quite match their sources. Shadows that fell at angles that defied the light. The constant, nagging sensation that I was being watched, even when the corridors were empty. My assignment for the day was Block D, East Wing. I'd asked for a different assignment. Jenkins had laughed a sharp, humorless bark. "Everyone asks that." Answer's no. You work where you're assigned. Simmons wasn't on shift, so I was paired with the mustached guard. His name was Kowalski, I'd learned. He was a man of few words, which suited me fine. We walked in silence through the winding corridors that led to Block D, our footsteps creating a rhythmic echo that sounded almost like breathing. The architecture in this section was different, older. The walls were actual stone rather than concrete, and they glistened with moisture despite the dry air. The fluorescent lights were spaced further apart here, leaving pools of deep shadow between them, and the temperature had dropped at least 10 degrees. "Why is it so cold?" I asked. Kowalski shrugged. "It just is. Gets colder the further east you go." The cells in Block D were different too. Instead of the modern bars I'd seen in Block C, these had thick iron doors with small viewing slots. Most were closed. The few that were open revealed cramped spaces barely large enough to turn around in. No windows, no furniture, except a concrete slab for a bed. "How many inmates in this block?" 7. Kowalski checked his clipboard. 3 in the west cells, 3 in the middle section, 1 at the far end. "The far end?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We made our rounds slowly, checking each cell through the viewing slots. The inmates here were different from Block C, more withdrawn, more empty. They sat on their beds or stood in corners, barely moving, their eyes fixed on nothing. One of them was muttering to himself in a language I didn't recognize. Another was completely still, his face pressed against the wall. And then there were the blue marks. They were everywhere here. Smudges on the doors, streaks on the floor, handprints on the ceiling. Some looked fresh, glistening wetly in the dim light. Others were faded, almost invisible. "Kowalski," I started, but he held up a hand. "Not yet. We checked the far cell last." We continued the rounds in silence. My heart was beating faster now, though I couldn't say why. The air felt thick, oppressive, like being underwater. And that cold draft I dismissed as imagination yesterday? It was back, stronger now, seeming to flow from the far end of the corridor. When we reached the last door, Kowalski stopped. He turned to me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. "Look through the slot. Don't say anything. Don't react. Just look, then step back." My mouth was dry. "What am I going to see?" "You'll know." I approached the door slowly. The blue marks were concentrated here, almost completely covering the iron surface. Some were handprints. Others were long streaks, as if someone had dragged their fingers down the metal. The slot was at eye level, and through it, I could see only darkness. Then something moved. It wasn't much, just a shift in the shadows, but my hindbrain screamed at me to run. Instead, I leaned closer, squinting into the darkness. And then, I saw them. Hands. Blue hands. Not like they'd been painted or dyed. The blue seemed to emanate from within, a cold, ethereal glow that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. The fingers were too long, the joints bent at slightly wrong angles. As I watched, they rose slowly into view, palms forward, as if reaching for me through the door. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. "Steady," Kowalski muttered, the hands pressed against the viewing slot. I could see them more clearly now. The blue was deeper at the fingertips, fading to a sickly pale at the wrists. The skin looked wrong, too smooth, almost translucent, and cold. I could feel the cold radiating from them even from 5 feet away. Then I saw the face. It emerged from the darkness behind the hands, pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes that reflected the blue glow. The man, if it was a man, smiled. His teeth were too white, too perfect. "New guard," he whispered. His voice was like wind through a graveyard. "I can smell the fresh fear on you." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Those eyes held me locked in place. "They told you the rule, didn't they?" The smile widened. "Don't touch me." Such a simple rule. But you want to know why, don't you? You want to understand. "Let's go," Kowalski said, gripping my arm. The inmate laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Too late. He's seen me now. That's the first step. First, you see. Then you dream. Then. The hands withdrew into darkness. Then you understand. Kowalski pulled me away from the door. We walked quickly back down the corridor, not speaking, not looking at each other. Behind us, I could hear that laugh echoing off the stone walls, following us like a shadow. It wasn't until we were back in the break room that I found my voice. What the hell was that? That was prisoner 7439, Kowalski said, pouring coffee with shaking hands. We don't use his name. Never use his name. What's wrong with him? Some kind of disease? If it were a disease, they'd have quarantined him somewhere medical. No, this is... He trailed off, searching for words. Nobody really knows. He was transferred here 20 years ago from another facility, supposedly killed 3 people, but his files mostly redacted. When he arrived, his hands were normal. Within a month, they'd turned blue. That's impossible. Yeah. Kowalski drained his coffee in one long gulp. Impossible. That's what Thompson said too. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I went through the motions, checking cells, walking rounds, filing reports, but my mind was elsewhere. Those blue hands, that smile, that voice. First you see, then you dream. I tried to push it from my mind, failed. That night, I saw them again. Not in person, in my apartment, in my dreams. I was walking through the corridors of Blackwood, but they were different, longer, darker, the walls closing in with each step. The blue marks were everywhere, glowing softly in the darkness, forming patterns that hurt to look at. And at the end of the corridor, standing in a pool of blue light, was prisoner 7439. His hands were raised, beckoning. "Come closer," he whispered, though I was still hundreds of feet away. "Come see what happens when you touch." I tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the floor. The corridor stretched, lengthening impossibly, and the prisoner came closer, gliding rather than walking, those glowing hands reaching out. "Don't you want to know?" His face was inches from mine now. "Don't you want to understand?" I woke up screaming. It was 3 a.m. My sheets were soaked with sweat despite the cold air, and on my hand, my right hand was a small blue smudge, right where the prisoner had touched me in my dream. Except it couldn't be real. It couldn't. I rushed to the bathroom and scrubbed my hand under scalding water until the skin was red and raw. The blue smudge didn't come off. It didn't even fade. I called in sick the next day. Jenkins didn't sound surprised, but staying home didn't help. The dreams followed me. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in those corridors, and the blue marks were spreading up my arm, across my chest, crawling toward my face and my reflection. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back. I had to understand, because the alternative that this was spreading, that I was somehow infected or cursed or marked, was too terrifying to accept. On the 3rd day, I returned to Blackwood. Jenkins took one look at me and frowned. "You look like hell." "I'm fine." "Uh-huh." She didn't believe me. "Block C today. Simmons is back." Relief washed over me. Not Block D, thank God. But as the day wore on, I started noticing things. The blue marks weren't confined to Block D anymore. They were appearing in Block C now. Faint, but visible. And the inmates were watching me differently, whispering when I passed, smiling in ways that made my skin crawl. During lunch, I caught sight of myself in a bathroom mirror. The blue smudge on my hand was larger, and now there was another one, on my neck, just below my ear. "You touched him, didn't you?" Simmons asked when I returned from the bathroom. "No, I never. Not physically, but you looked. You really looked." He shook his head. "That's all it takes sometimes. Just attention. Just acknowledgement. What's happening to me? I don't know. But you need to stay away from Block D, far away." I tried. God, I tried. But that night, I dreamed again. And this time, when I walked those impossible corridors, I heard other voices, whispers from behind the walls, crying from the cells, and beneath it all, that same laugh, echoing endlessly. "Come back," the prisoner whispered. "Come back and touch me. End this." I woke up to find myself standing in my kitchen, car keys in hand, fully dressed. I had no memory of getting up, no memory of getting dressed, but I knew where I'd been planning to go. The blue marks now covered both my hands. I stopped sleeping. It wasn't a choice, not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in those corridors. The dreams were becoming more vivid, more real. Sometimes I'd wake up and find myself in different rooms of my apartment with no memory of moving. Once, I woke up standing in front of my door, hand on the knob, ready to leave, to go back. The blue marks were spreading faster now. They covered my hands completely, creeping up my forearms like frost on a window. I started wearing long sleeves to work, despite the facility's oppressive heat everywhere except Block D. Nobody commented. I suspected they didn't want to know. On my 6th day, Kowalski pulled me aside after morning briefing. "You need to see someone." "I'm fine." "Bullshit. You look like a corpse. And your hands." He gestured at my sleeves. "I've seen this before. 3 times before. It always ends the same way." "How does it end?" He didn't answer, just shook his head and walked away. But Jenkins wasn't so reticent. She cornered me in the locker room that afternoon, her face grim. 20 years ago, a guard named Mitchell made it to where you are now. He lasted 2 more weeks. Then, one night, he drove back to the facility at 2 a.m., let himself into Block D, and opened cell 7439. My blood ran cold. What happened? They found his uniform outside the cell, folded neatly, his badge, his keys, everything but Mitchell. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. The camera footage showed him walking into the cell, standing there for maybe 30 seconds. Then the picture went static. When it cleared, he was gone. The cell was empty. Prisoner 7439 was sitting on his bunk, smiling. "That's impossible." "Yeah, that word again." She straightened up. "The point is, whatever's happening to you, it's not going to stop. Not unless you do something about it." "Like what?" "Quit. Leave. Get as far from here as you can." "And go where?" "It's in my dreams, Jenkins. It's on my skin." "How do I run from that?" She had no answer. That night, I decided to fight back the only way I knew how: research. I broke into the facility's archive room after hours, using the key code I'd memorized watching Jenkins punch it in. The room was dusty and cramped, filled with filing cabinets that dated back decades. I found prisoner 7439's file tucked in the back, marked with red tape. The file was thin, most of it had been redacted, but what remained was enough to paint a disturbing picture. Transfer from Ashwood Psychiatric Hospital, May 1999. Patient exhibited extreme violent tendencies and delusions. Multiple escape attempts. 3 fatalities during containment breach. Subject claims the blue coloration on his hands began after exposure to something beyond the walls. Repeated requests for sedation denied due to redacted. The next page was a medical report from 2 years after his transfer. Subject's hands have completely changed color. Biological analysis inconclusive. DNA samples deteriorate rapidly after collection. Temperature readings suggest localized hypothermia concentrated in extremities. Subject claims he can see through the walls now and touch things that aren't there. Multiple guards have reported nightmares after extended exposure to subject. Recommend extreme isolation protocols. And then, at the bottom, a handwritten note. Don't let him touch you. Don't let him touch anyone. The spreading must not continue. The spreading. I looked at my hands, now glowing faintly in the dim light of the archive room. The blue had reached my elbows. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Come see me. Cell 7439. We need to talk." I dropped the phone. It clattered against the floor, the screen cracking. But the message was still visible, still glowing in the darkness. "I can make it stop. Just come." I ran from the archive room, my heart pounding, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The corridors seemed longer than usual, the lights dimmer. And everywhere I looked, I saw blue marks. On the walls, the floors, the ceilings, they pulsed with that same cold light that now emanated from my skin. I made it to the parking lot before collapsing against my car, vomiting into the gravel. When I looked up, I saw a figure standing in one of the upper windows, too far away to make out details, but I knew. I could feel those eyes on me. The next day, I couldn't go to work. I called in sick again, and this time Jenkins didn't even try to hide her concern. "You need to check yourself into a hospital. They can't help me." "Then what can?" I didn't answer because I already knew. There was only one way this ended. The files had made that clear. Every guard who'd been marked, Every person who'd looked too long into that cell, they all ended up the same way, going back, opening the door, and disappearing. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I was going to fight it. I spent the day researching everything I could find about Blackwood Correctional. The facility had opened in 1952 as a military detention center. It had been converted to civilian use in the 72nds, but there were gaps in the records. Years where nothing was documented. Buildings that appeared on old blueprints but didn't exist anymore. Tunnels that led nowhere. And deaths. So many deaths. Guards, inmates, administrators. Over the decades, Blackwood had one of the highest mortality rates of any facility in the country. Most were listed as accidents or natural causes, but the pattern was clear. People disappeared here. That night, the dreams changed. Instead of wandering corridors, I was standing outside cell 7439. The door was open. Inside, I could see prisoner 7439 sitting on his bunk, those glowing hands folded in his lap. He was smiling. "You're almost ready," he said. "Almost ripe. Ready for what? To join us." He gestured around the cell, and suddenly I could see them, dozens of figures pressed against the walls. Their forms barely visible, translucent. All of them had blue hands. All of them were smiling. "Everyone who touches me joins us. Everyone who's marked comes home. I won't come back." His laugh echoed through my skull. "You already are." I woke up in my car in the Blackwood parking lot. It was 2 a.m. I was in my pajamas, barefoot, and I had no memory of driving here. The facility loomed before me like a monument to ancient horror, and in the East Wing, one light was on. Cell 7439. He was waiting. My phone buzzed again. Another message. "The door is unlocked. Come home." I started the engine with trembling hands and drove away, but I knew it was only a matter of time. The blue had spread to my shoulders now, creeping toward my chest, and the voices in my dreams were getting louder. "Come home! Come home! Come home!" I had maybe days left, maybe hours. I needed help, real help. But when I tried to explain to anyone, my doctor, my friends, my family, they all saw the same thing. A man having a breakdown, stress from a new job, sleep deprivation. No one believed the marks were real. No one could see them, except Jenkins. She came to my apartment on the 8th day, holding a thick folder. "I knew you'd try to fight it. They all do." She dropped the folder on my table. "This is everything I could find. About him, about the others, about what's really happening." The folder contained newspaper clippings, police reports, medical records, all heavily redacted but readable. The story they told was horrifying. Prisoner 7439 was originally named Marcus Thale. Before his arrest, he'd been a researcher at a classified government facility studying something. The reports called it extra-dimensional phenomena. He'd been part of a team that had found a way to breach the barrier between our reality and something else. The experiment had gone wrong. Marcus had been exposed, and when they found him 3 days later, his hands were blue, and he'd killed everyone else on the team with a touch. Literally, one touch, and they'd vanished. No bodies, no traces, just gone. "The government covered it up," Jenkins said. "Sent him here where they could keep him isolated, but the effect is spreading. Slowly. Anyone who gets too close, anyone who looks too long, they get marked. And once you're marked..." She trailed off. "They come back and touch him," I finished, "and they disappear. Not disappear, transform, become part of whatever he is now, whatever's on the other side." I looked at my hands. The blue glow was pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. "How do I stop it?" "You don't. No one has. But..." She hesitated. "There's one thing. Marcus had a partner, Dr. Elena Shaw. She survived the initial incident. She's in a psychiatric facility upstate. If anyone knows how to reverse this, it's her. Can you get me her contact information?" "Already did." She handed me a piece of paper with an address. "But hurry. You don't have much time." I drove through the night, my hands clenched on the wheel, fighting the urge to turn around. The facility appeared around dawn, a sprawling complex surrounded by tall walls. Nothing like Blackwood, but still a prison. Dr. Shaw was in her 70s now, thin and frail, with eyes that had seen too much. When I showed her my hands, she started crying. Another one. God, another one. Can you help me? She shook her head slowly. I've been trying for 25 years. There is no cure. Once Marcus touches you, even just your thoughts, you're connected to him, connected to what's beyond. So, I'm just going to… What? Disappear? Worse. She leaned forward, gripping my arm with surprising strength. You'll become part of it, part of the space between worlds, forever reaching, forever touching, forever spreading. Marcus was the first, but he won't be the last. Each person who joins him expands the infection. Eventually. She released me, slumping back. Eventually, the barrier will fail completely. There has to be a way to fight it. There is. One way. Her eyes met mine, hollow and resigned. Die before it completes. Take yourself out of the equation. I drove back to my apartment in a daze. The blue had reached my chest now, creeping toward my heart. I could feel its cold tendrils working their way through my veins, changing me from the inside out. That night, I dreamed I was already inside the cell. Marcus stood before me, his hand extended. It's time, he whispered. Join us. Become what you were always meant to be. And what's that? A bridge, a doorway, a spreading infection of reality itself. His hand touched my chest. I woke up screaming, the blue glow now covering my torso. And in my mind, I could hear them dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all whispering in unison. Come home, come home, come home. Tomorrow, I knew, I would go back to Blackwood. I would walk to Block D. I would open cell 7,439, and I would cease to exist, unless I could find another way. I had one night left. I could feel it in my bones, in the blue ice creeping through my veins. The transformation was accelerating. My chest, my back, my neck all glowing with that cold, ethereal light. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked like him, like Marcus Thale, like all the others who'd been marked and consumed. I couldn't die. Despite Dr. Shaw's suggestion, I couldn't bring myself to do it. But I also couldn't let this continue. If I went back to Blackwood and touched Marcus, I'd become part of whatever nightmarish collective consciousness he'd created. Another ghost in the machine, another hand reaching from beyond reality. There had to be another option. I spent the night going through Jenkins's folder again, searching for anything I'd missed. And there, buried in a police report from the original incident, was a single line that made my blood freeze. Subject claims exposure occurred when attempting to close the breach. Equipment serial number BRH77A still on site. Equipment on site at the original facility. I made calls through the night, using databases I probably shouldn't have had access to, following paper trails that had been deliberately obscured. By dawn, I had an address. The facility was abandoned now, condemned after the incident, but it was only 2 hours away. I drove as the sun rose, my hands now completely blue, gripping the wheel. The transformation was spreading faster. I could feel my thoughts beginning to split, like there were multiple voices in my head. Some were mine, others weren't. Come back! Why are you running? It's inevitable. The facility was in worse shape than I'd imagined. A sprawling complex of concrete buildings surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with warning signs. Condemned. Hazardous materials. No trespassing. The windows were broken, the doors hanging off their hinges. I broke through the fence easily. The chain was rusted through in several places. Inside, the buildings were dark, filled with debris and the smell of mold and decay. But I knew where I needed to go. The basement. That's where the breach had occurred. That's where this had started. The stairs were treacherous, half collapsed and covered in standing water. My phone's flashlight barely penetrated the darkness, and the voices in my head were getting louder. Turn back. Come home. We're waiting. The basement was a maze of corridors and locked doors. I broke through them methodically, following the pull I felt in my chest, a magnetic attraction towards something I couldn't see. The blue glow from my skin provided enough light to see by now. I was becoming my own light source. Finally, I found it. A large chamber, maybe 50 feet across, with walls covered in scorch marks and strange symbols. In the center was a piece of equipment, a ring of metal and circuitry about 6 feet in diameter, tilted at an angle. It was unpowered, inert, but I could still feel something emanating from it. And around it, written in what looked like dried blood, were words: "Do not activate. Breach cannot be contained." But beneath that, in fresher writing maybe months old, someone had added, "Unless you want to close it." I circled the equipment, studying it. There was a control panel on one side, still intact, and next to it, a manual, yellowed and water-damaged, but readable. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding. The breach was still open. Not wide, the equipment had partially collapsed it when it had been destroyed, but open enough for something to reach through. That's what Marcus was, a human being touched by something from beyond the veil, transformed into a conduit, and the infection spread through proximity, through attention, through dreams. But if the breach could be widened, it could also be closed. I studied the manual, understanding dawning. The equipment hadn't been destroyed. It had been shut down improperly, leaving the breach in a state of flux. To close it properly, I'd need to restart the equipment and reverse the polarity, effectively pulling the breach shut from this side. The problem? It required a human operator, someone to stand in the center of the ring and manually collapse the field. And according to the manual, anyone who did that would be consumed, pulled through, lost forever. The voices in my head screamed at me to stop. Marcus's voice rose above the others, no longer whispering but shouting, "Don't! You'll destroy us. You'll destroy everything." I smiled. Good. It took me 3 hours to get the equipment running. The power had to be rerouted from a working section of the facility. Circuits had to be repaired. Safety mechanisms had to be bypassed. But finally, the ring began to hum, a low thrumming that I felt in my bones. The air inside the ring shimmered, like heat waves rising from asphalt. And through that shimmer, I could see it, the space between, a darkness that wasn't empty but full. Full of hands, all of them blue, all of them reaching, dozens of them, hundreds, all the people Marcus had touched over the years. And in the center, Marcus himself, his face twisted in rage. "You can't do this. You're part of us now. If you close the breach, you'll be trapped there. Forever." I know. I stepped into the ring. The cold was instantaneous and absolute. It felt like being plunged into Arctic water, every nerve screaming. The blue glow from my skin intensified, becoming almost blinding, and I could feel them now, all the others, their thoughts, their memories, their terror. We were connected, a vast web of consciousness spanning the gap between realities. I reached for the manual controls, my fingers barely responding. The field was pulling at me, trying to drag me through, but I'd read the manual. I knew the sequence. Please. We didn't ask for this. We're victims too. I hesitated. That voice, it wasn't Marcus. It was one of the others. One of the guards who'd been taken. Thompson, maybe. Or Mitchell. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "but this has to end." I activated the collapse sequence. The ring shrieked a sound like reality tearing, and the shimmer became a maelstrom. The pull increased 1,000-fold. I felt my body starting to come apart, pulled in multiple directions at once, but I held on to the controls, entering the final code with fingers that were no longer entirely physical. Marcus's scream was infinite. It echoed across dimensions, a sound of pure rage and loss. The hands around him began to dissolve, pulled back through the closing breach. He fought, reaching for me, his blue hands stretching impossibly far. They touched my chest. Everything went white. For a moment, maybe an eternity, I was nowhere and everywhere. I could see all of it. The facility, Blackwood, the hundreds of facilities and prisons and asylums across the country, all with their own breaches, their own Marcuses. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was spreading, a cancer across reality itself. And then I saw further, saw what was on the other side, the things that had touched Marcus, the things that wanted through. They were vast, ancient, hungry, and closing this one breach wouldn't stop them, but it would slow them down. I completed the sequence, and reality snapped back like a rubber band. The ring imploded with a deafening crack, the metal twisting and collapsing inward. The shimmer vanished. The cold evaporated. I fell to the ground, no longer glowing. The blue was fading from my skin, peeling away like old paint. And in my mind, the voices were silent. Marcus was gone. The others were gone, but I knew the truth now. I'd seen it. There were more breaches, more infected. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I crawled out of the chamber, my body aching like I'd been beaten. The facility was silent around me, but it felt different now. Cleaner, less oppressive. I'd closed one doorway, saved maybe hundreds of people from becoming victims. But somewhere out there, another Marcus was spreading his infection. Another breach was widening, and nobody knew. Nobody except me. I should have left, should have gotten in my car and driven as far away as possible. Instead, I went back to Blackwood. I had to know. It was late afternoon when I arrived. The facility looked different in the fading light, less oppressive, more sad. Just a building full of broken people. Jenkins met me at the gate, her eyes widening when she saw me. You're not glowing. I closed the breach, I said, at the original facility. It's gone. And Marcus? I don't know. Let me see him. She hesitated, then nodded. We walked through the corridors together, and I noticed immediately that something had changed. The blue marks were fading, not gone, but dimmer, as if someone had turned down their intensity. The air felt warmer. The oppressive weight that had hung over the facility was lifting. Block D, East Wing, Cell 7439. The door was still closed, but the concentration of blue marks around it had diminished significantly. Jenkins handed me the key with trembling hands. Are you sure? I wasn't. But I opened the door anyway. The cell was dark. For a moment, I thought it was empty. Then I saw him, Marcus Thale, prisoner 7439, huddled in the corner. His hands were no longer glowing. They were just hands. Human hands. Pale and scarred, but human. He looked up at me, and I saw tears streaming down his face. You closed it, he whispered. After 25 years, you actually closed it. You're free? Free? He laughed bitterly. I'm trapped in this body, in this cell, with the memories of what I did, what I became, what I helped bring through. He held up his hands. But yes, the connection is severed. I'm just a man now, just a murderer. I stepped closer. What was it? What was on the other side? Hungry things. Old things. They found a crack in reality, and they've been pushing against it ever since. I became their tool, their way through. Everyone I touched became part of their network, expanding their reach. He looked at his hands with disgust. I killed so many people. Not anymore. No, not anymore. But there are others. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. All across the world. Other breaches. Other conduits. His eyes met mine, and I saw something there. Desperation. Hope. Madness. You saw them, didn't you? When you closed the breach. You saw the pattern. I had. And I understood now why Dr. Shaw had spent 25 years in that psychiatric facility. Why she'd warned me about the truth. Because once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. The breaches weren't accidents. They'd been deliberate. Someone, something had orchestrated them, created dozens of Marcus Thales across the globe, and they were all still out there, spreading their infection, weakening the barriers between realities, preparing for something. How many? I asked. I don't know. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Every maximum security facility has at least one. Prisoners that other prisons couldn't hold. Inmates that broke the people around them just by existing. He stood slowly, his body frail from decades of isolation. They're everywhere. And you just closed one door out of thousands. Then I'll close the others. He laughed again, but this time there was no bitterness, just exhaustion. You can't. You're one person. And most of them don't even know they're infected, don't know they're conduits. He moved to the door, standing in the threshold for the first time in decades. But you know now, and that knowledge. He tapped his temple. That changes everything. I felt it then. A slight pull, like gravity shifting. When I looked at my hands, I saw the faintest hint of blue returning to my fingertips. No. I closed it. I collapsed the breach. You collapsed one breach, but you stood at the center of it. You looked through to the other side. You connected with them. Marcus smiled sadly. You didn't save yourself. You just delayed it. The blue was spreading again. Slower this time, but inevitable. And now, I understood. Closing the breach hadn't ended the infection. It had just transferred it. I was the new conduit, the new bridge between worlds. How long do I have? Depends. If you resist, maybe years. If you give in, he shrugged. Days. Jenkins appeared in the doorway, her face pale. What's happening? Why are you… She saw my hands and stepped back. No, you said you closed it. I did. But there's more. So much more. I looked at Marcus. What do I do? The same thing I should have done 25 years ago. He held up his wrists, showing the scars their old suicide attempts that had healed. End it before it spreads, before you become what I was. There has to be another way. There isn't. I've had 2 decades to search for one. This infection doesn't end. It just moves, spreads, consumes. The only way to stop it is to remove the conduit before it's established. He moved past me, walking out of his cell for the first time since his incarceration. But you won't. None of them do. They all think they're special, think they can control it. And one by one, they all become what I was. He walked down the corridor, leaving the cell door open. Jenkins and I watched him go, neither of us sure what to do. At the end of the corridor, he turned back. When it gets too strong, when you can't fight it anymore, come see me. I'll help you do what needs to be done. Then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows of Blackwood Correctional. Jenkins drove me to the hospital that night. Not to check in, I knew they couldn't help but to find Dr. Shaw's contact information. If anyone knew more about the breaches, about the network, it was her. But when we called, the facility told us Dr. Shaw had died 3 days ago. Heart attack in her sleep. Or that's what they claimed. I spent the next week researching, following the threads I'd seen in my vision. Facilities across the country, each with their own Marcus Thale, their own blue-handed prisoner, their own spreading infection. And nobody connecting the dots, nobody seeing the pattern, except me. The blue spread to my wrists, then my forearms. But this time, I knew what it meant. I was connected now, connected to something vast and ancient and utterly inhuman. And every night, in my dreams, I could feel them pushing against the barriers, hungry, patient, inevitable. I tried to warn people, contacted government agencies, psychiatric professionals, law enforcement. Nobody believed me. They saw a disturbed individual, someone who'd suffered a breakdown, someone who needed medication and rest. Nobody could see what I could see, the pattern, the network, the slow erosion of reality itself. On the 10th day after closing the breach, I returned to Blackwood. Jenkins met me at the gate, her face grim. Marcus escaped last night, just walked out. Guards said they felt compelled to let him go, but they can't explain why. He's spreading the infection, I said. Now that he's no longer connected, he's trying to create new breaches, new conduits. Can we stop him? I looked at my hands, now glowing steadily. I don't know, but I have to try. Because the alternative, accepting my role as the new Marcus Thale, spending decades in isolation while the infection spread, was unthinkable. That night, I had another dream. But this time, I wasn't in Blackwood's corridors. I was standing in a vast space, infinite and empty, yet somehow suffocating. And in the distance, I saw them. Thousands of figures, all with blue hands, all reaching toward me. And beyond them, something bigger. Something that made Marcus's infection look like a single cell in a vast organism. They weren't trying to come through. They were already here. The breaches were just the beginning. The infection was just phase 1. And phase 2. I woke up screaming, the blue light from my hands bright enough to light the room. I had days left, maybe hours, and I finally understood what had to be done. I'm writing this from cell 7439, Block D, East Wing of Blackwood Correctional Facility. I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking, that I've given in, that I've accepted my role as the next Marcus Thale. But you're wrong. I requested isolation. Demanded it, actually. Jenkins tried to argue, but I explained what would happen if I didn't contain myself. How the infection would spread. How I'd mark others, create new conduits, expand the network. She understood. She's seen it before. The cell is exactly as Marcus left it, cold, dark, covered in fading blue marks. But I'm making new ones now. Every day, the blue spreads further across my skin, my chest, my back, my face. Soon, I'll be completely transformed, completely connected. But I'm not giving in. I've spent the last 3 weeks researching, using the access Jenkins provides me. She brings me files, documents, books, anything I need. And slowly, piece by piece, I'm mapping the network. Every facility with an infected inmate, every breach that's still open, every conduit that's still spreading. There are 347 of them, globally, all connected, all working toward the same goal, weakening the barriers between our reality and theirs until the things on the other side can push through completely. But now I'm connected too. And that means I can see the network from the inside, trace its pathways, identify its nodes, and destroy them. It took me 2 weeks to figure out how. The breaches can't be closed from this side, not without sacrificing the conduit, but they can be overloaded, fed so much energy that they collapse in on themselves, taking the conduit with them. I've already done it twice. 2 facilities, 2 breaches, 2 conduits gone. The network felt it. I felt their confusion, their anger. They didn't expect me to fight back from the inside, but there are 345 more, and I'm running out of time. The transformation is almost complete. My hands glow constantly now, bright enough that Jenkins has to wear sunglasses when she visits. My thoughts are fragmenting, splitting into multiple streams. Sometimes I hear their voices, the things on the other side, whispering promises and threats in languages that hurt to comprehend. I dream of vast spaces filled with reaching hands. I dream of reality peeling away like old wallpaper, revealing something underneath that shouldn't exist. I dream of the day when all the breaches open simultaneously, and they finally push through. It's coming. Soon. But I'll stop as many as I can before that happens. Jenkins brought me something yesterday. A package, unmarked, delivered to the facility, addressed to prisoner 7,439. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message. There are others like you, fighting from the inside. You're not alone. Keep going. I don't know who sent it. Another infected guard? Someone who'd figured out the pattern? Dr. Shaw? From beyond the grave? It doesn't matter. What matters is the work. Last night, I collapsed breach number 157, a psychiatric facility in Oregon. The conduit, a patient who'd been marked 15 years ago, is gone now. The network shuddered. They're starting to realize what I'm doing, and they're angry. The whispers in my dreams have become screams. The hands that reach for me are more aggressive, more desperate. They know I'm dismantling their invasion, one breach at a time, and they can't stop me because to stop me, they'd have to sever my connection. And if they do that, I lose access to the network. It's a game of chicken. Who breaks first, me or them? I'm betting on them. Jenkins visits every day now. She brings me news from the outside world, reports of strange occurrences at maximum security facilities, power outages, mass hallucinations among staff, inmates found dead in their cells with no apparent cause. The network is collapsing. Slowly, but surely. But so am I. I look in the mirror now, and I don't recognize the face staring back. It's become gaunt, translucent, more ghost than human. My eyes glow with that same blue light. When I touch the walls, I leave handprints that don't fade. I'm becoming what Marcus was, what all 347 conduits became. But I'm using it, weaponizing it. 47 breaches left, 47 conduits still spreading the infection. I can feel them now, their confusion, their fear. They didn't sign up for this. They're victims too, just like Marcus said. Touched by something they didn't understand, transformed into tools for an invasion they never wanted. But they have to go. We all have to go. For every breach I collapse, the network weakens. And eventually, when I've collapsed enough of them, the things on the other side won't have the power to push through. The invasion will fail. even if it means my own destruction. Jenkins asked me yesterday if I was afraid. I told her the truth. I'm terrified. Terrified of what I'm becoming. Terrified of what happens if I fail. Terrified of what happens if I succeed. Because when I collapse the last breach, when I destroy the final conduit, where does that leave me? Still connected, still transformed, still glowing with that cold blue light. Still a doorway, but one that leads nowhere. I don't know if I'll survive it. I don't know if I want to, but I know I have to try. 23 breaches left. The things on the other side are screaming now. I can hear them even when I'm awake. They're throwing everything at me, nightmares so vivid I can't distinguish them from reality. Physical pain that makes me want to claw my own skin off. Visions of futures where they've already won. But I keep working, keep mapping, keep destroying. 15 breaches left. Jenkins told me that Marcus Thale was found yesterday. He'd broken into an abandoned facility in Utah and reactivated the equipment there. Was trying to open a new breach. Security stopped him before he could complete the sequence. He's in custody now. Federal, not state. They're keeping him somewhere classified. I hope they kill him. For his sake. 8 breaches left. I can barely write anymore. My hands pass through the pen more often than they grip it. I'm becoming incorporeal, phasing in and out of reality. Sometimes,